This is Hyperia, the tallest and fastest roller coaster in the UK that opened in May 2024. It's 236 feet high, has speeds of over 80 miles per hour, and is also branded as the UK's most weightless roller coaster. Whatever that means. But despite all those stats, is this new roller coaster any good? Is it really the UK's best roller coaster? Let me give you my take. For a start, it's at Thorpe Park, which is, well, it's Thorpe Park. It's one of those places I often enjoy most when it's at its funniest. I enjoy making fun of its goofy marketing, its weird obsession with shipping containers, and its sometimes inexplicable decisions. For example, the other new attraction added to Thorpe Park this year was the Ready Player One 4D experience, where you get the chance to watch a poorly edited down version of a few action scenes from the 2018 film whilst they spray air in your face. It's a contender for the most half-assed theme park attraction of all time, and I adore them for it. But no one really cared how lazy this edition was, as it was all eyes on Hyperia, which was the first new roller coaster at Thorpe Park in over 12 years when it opened this May. As I mentioned before, Thorpe bragged about Hyperia being the UK's tallest and fastest roller coaster, which made me not that excited. Often attractions which are built to break records actually aren't that good, as they're so focused on hitting a certain speed or height or length, instead of focusing on making the best experience possible. But despite my initial lack of interest, I'm friends with a lot of coaster nerds who assured me it was going to be genuinely good because of the blah blah element and something airtime and all this other stuff I wasn't really paying attention to. But it did mean I became cautiously optimistic. Just kidding, I got so invested in the hype that, to my shame, I booked a day off work, slept overnight in a shipping container hotel room on the Thorpe Park site, and woke up at 5:30 AM so I'd be one of the first to ride Hyperia on its opening day. According to Thorpe Park, Hyperia is inspired by the legendary daughter of an ancient river god who dared to defy her fears. There's an animated video on their Instagram page telling this full backstory, and then also once an hour there's this dance show by the coaster telling the story of this goddess to a mashup of the ride's orchestral theme and God is a Woman by Ariana Grande. I'm gonna have to say it, it's camp. But beyond these, this story is not really a part of the ride or even its marketing, and something that 99.9% of visitors won't even know exists. But also, frankly, I don't really care. Obviously, I'm someone who loves a themed coaster. A bunch of my favourites have really cool theming and visual identities, but particularly with a massive coaster like Hyperia in a park like Thorpe, I think the goal outside of the coaster should be make it a pleasant area to be. Paint the buildings a nice colour, add some shade, plant some trees, maybe add some water features, rather than half-ass some theme or story. Unfortunately, instead, the whole area is slathered in this gold paint that's trying to look luxurious but ends up reminding me more of baby food. The queue area is barren at best and claustrophobic at worst, and none of the landscaping got finished in time, so the coaster flies over what could be best described as a muddy pond. It's a shame, but as this is a park that's more about the thrills than the aesthetics, I'd be willing to look past all of this if, as a roller coaster, Hyperia was able to really deliver. And Hyperia, purely as a coaster, she's a beauty. There's so many smart and inventive design choices that turn what could have been a big generic coaster into a more special experience. So on a coaster you have positive G-forces, which is when you feel yourself being pushed down into your seat, and negative G-forces where you feel yourself being lifted out of your seat, which is often called airtime. This is a ride that, as I mentioned earlier, was marketed as not just the UK's tallest and fastest roller coaster, but as the most weightless, which I think is an attempt to say in a less nerdy way that this ride has loads of airtime, these moments where you feel the negative G-forces lifting you out of your seat. Before the ride opened, despite the ride lasting only around 37 seconds from the first drop to the brake run, Thorpe announced that Hyperia would have 14.8 seconds of airtime. This claim that you'd spend almost half the ride time being lifted out your seat was seen as a bit laughable. But now, I genuinely think that's pretty accurate. It's insane how much of this ride feels like it's trying to fling you out of your seat, and when the ride only has a lap bar, it just makes it all feel so terrifying and freeing. I know I said earlier I don't really care about it being a UK record-breaking height, but as someone who is terrified of heights, Going up this enormous lift hill with the soundtrack blaring as you climb higher than all these other pretty big coasters makes me freak out every time. This is followed by an incredible drop, which isn't just great because of its height, but it also twists round as you drop in a way that properly flings you forward. But unlike a lot of coasters that start with a really good first drop and then lose momentum, I don't even think this is the highlight of the ride. There's this loop that as you're going upside down stalls or intentionally slows down, leaving you hanging upside down for a few really disorientating seconds. But my favourite element, I'm not even sure how to describe, as it's pretty unique to Hyperia. I've heard it being called the Kremer roll after its designer Maurice Kremer, but it's kind of a hill that flings you outwards onto your side before you twist and dive back in towards the ground. Okay, that was a terrible description, but I'm still not quite sure where I am or what's happening every time I ride it. It's so unlike any sensation I've ever experienced on a coaster before. But even outside of these big, impressive parts of the coaster, there's one underappreciated moment right at the beginning that I think deserves a mention. As soon as you leave the station and before the lift hill, the ride starts with this very slow and gentle bank turn that tilts you on your side to face the people queuing down below you. It creates this fun social moment between those on the ride and those in line, and it's a great example of this desire to make every moment count on this ride. And every moment really does count. Before going on this ride, I was worried it might feel too short, but it doesn't really feel like that due to how well paced and relentless this whole experience is. Honestly, I could go into a lot more detail, but I'm very conscious that ultimately I'm no expert in coaster engineering. There's probably people out there who are far more articulate about all the physics and stuff that really makes this coaster work that I don't fully understand. But I do understand emotions, because like Drake, I'm always in my feelings. Actually, bad idea, let's not have a conversation about Drake right now, but most of the coasters at Thorpe up until this point have been going for an intense, scary or apocalyptic kind of vibe, which primarily focused emotionally on creating fear in the rider. And this is easy emotional territory for roller coasters to play in. Roller coasters are inherently scary, and it's easy to lean into that with how you position them. I mentioned earlier that this contrived story about some daughter of a god isn't really used in the actual attraction or even its marketing, but there is an idea that is much more present in the ride and its marketing, and in my opinion works a lot better, which is this more conceptual hook of find your fearless.
Fear. When it comes to us, we have a choice. Fight or flight. What if we chose both? Hyperia. Find your fearless.
I think this is a slightly more nuanced idea than big roller coaster scary, but it's making overcoming that fear be something aspirational. Theme park designer Eddie Soto talked about his approach to thrill attractions being fear minus death equals fun. The idea is that people don't just want to survive, they want to thrive. Fear minus death equals fun is the rewarding experience you get when you feel like you're pushing your own limits. I think this is something that Hyperia does really well. The story of this girl boss goddess is irrelevant, but the real story is this core concept that centers you. That this is going to be scary, but you're going to be brave and rise to the challenge, and you're going to love it. Thorpe even talks on their website about how the ride will make you feel not just physically, but also emotionally, saying that Hyperia will make you feel weightless, fearless, invincible. What makes it more than just a marketing hook is how this idea ladders up to how all these design choices I mentioned earlier on the coaster itself make you feel. The long journey upwards into the sky builds up this rising sense of fear, but after the insane and terrifying first drop, the rest of this floaty, airtime filled ride feels freeing. These negative G-forces create a ride experience that's so joyful. As you fly through these elements, it feels like you're thriving, you're experiencing something exhilarating, and when it ends, you come off feeling capable of anything. So, is it the best roller coaster in the UK? I could see an argument for Nemesis Reborn at Alton Towers, as it's not just a good coaster, but surrounded by gorgeous terrain, it's part of a really cool themed area, and even has an adjacent tie-in prequel attraction that I like to treat as an elaborate pre-show for the coaster. If we were allowed to treat all of this as one big package, I'd maybe argue that it's better. But at that point, are we even talking about the roller coaster itself? Because for all I nitpick the area and aesthetic choices surrounding Hyperia, it ultimately doesn't really diminish the experience once you're sat in your seat on the actual ride. And nothing else in the country comes close to the breathtaking, relentless, imaginative, joyful experience that Hyperia creates, and purely as a roller coaster, it's clearly a country mile ahead of every other coaster in the UK. You want to go together sometime? I'm free tomorrow if you are.